What is going on, guys? We're out here in Roland Moore Park in Fort Collins, Colorado today. It's a balmy 32 degrees, perfect weather to film a review, in my opinion. And I'm excited about the bike we're looking at today. We're looking at the Trek Verve Plus 2. Now, we covered the original Verve Plus back in 2018. We loved it then. It was Trek's most affordable electric bike. I believe it does still hold that title, in fact. And it's one of our most requested bikes in recent months. We've seen people on the forums and YouTube channel on our 2018 review of the Verve Plus saying, hey, can you cover the new model? So we heard you and we are covering it. So this one that we've got today, this is the extra large frame. And you get a lot of choices for frames and colors here. That's one of the perks of buying from a bigger dealer like Trek. And Trek, of course, they're one of the big three names in cycling. You got Trek, Giant, and Specialized. So with Trek, you have dealers and shops all over the country, all over the world, really. So you get great support. There's also a fantastic warranty, too. You get 2 years of comprehensive coverage for most of the components, then you get a lifetime coverage on the frame and fork. That is awesome. That's actually a big upgrade to the warranty that just went out in 2020. Prior to this, you got 5 years on the frame and fork. So that's awesome. Trek's really standing behind their work with these, so I appreciate that. Now, as I mentioned, you get a lot of options for your size and color choices, as well as 2 different frame styles. So this is the high step frame, and there is also a step through frame, a little bit more approachable, and also has the smaller frame size options for it. So if you want the high step here, you can choose between medium, large, and extra large. And then if you want the step through, then you can go large, medium, or all the way down to small. Lots of options, lots of color choices. We got the Alpine Blue today. There's also a metallic, kind of a gunmetal, like a polished gunmetal gray. And then there is a magenta, very bright, really stands out. I like all of them. The blue is probably my favorite. I like how it goes with the black. I think that's awesome. It matches up well with the Bosch components and also with the Bontrager components here, which Bontrager is Trek's in-house component brand, and so you see a lot of that on the bike. Saddle, grips, pedals, probably quite a few more. We'll get into all those details as we walk through the bike. Now, one of the perks of having had us review the original Verve Plus model back in 2018 is you can go to our site, ElectricBikeReview.com. We've got a compare tool there. So you can compare these 2 bikes head to head. You can go down the list and you can see exactly what's changed for every component, the measurements, etc., etc. So be sure and check that out. We're going to be talking about a lot of those changes as we go through the bike today. Now, it is still a Class 1 electric bike, which is pedal assist only, no throttle, and it can go up to 20 miles per hour with the electric assistance. And it's got the class sticker on it that's hiding right down here underneath the down tube. Shows what it's rated at, and it is still using a Bosch mid-drive. We're still using the same mid-drive. In fact, it is the Bosch Active Line. You can see that right there. So this is more of a power sipping kind of a motor. It doesn't eat a lot of power, and it doesn't give you a whole lot of assistance either. And it does have an excellent range to it, which is why it's one of my favorites. I like to get a little bit of exercise and pedal more actively when I'm riding. So I love this motor. Weighs about 6.4 pounds on that. So it doesn't add a whole lot of weight to the bike. We've got the same battery as well. So the Bosch Power Pack 400, so named because it gives you about 400 watt hours, which is not a ton. Like, it's pretty decent capacity. We are starting to see a lot higher capacity on some newer bikes, but this works really well for the Verve Plus 2. You know, you can get anywhere from 35 miles of range, and that's on the low end if you're using turbo. But if you drop that down to, you know, eco, you're looking at more like 80, 90 miles of range. It's fantastic, especially if you're like me and you like to pedal a little bit more actively while you're going. Now, if you are somebody who wants a little bit more assistance, then you might want to look at a different bike. And another thing to note about this Active Line motor is that it's limited to 100 RPM support. And so that's referring to the revolutions per minute as you're cycling the pedals. If you're somebody who has, let's say, knee sensitivity, and so you prefer to be in a lower gear and cycle more so it's a little bit easier on your knees, then you might pass that 100 RPM limit and then not be getting any help from the motor as you're riding. So, you know, go and test ride this to see if it's going to work for you before you buy it, of course. You know, that's one of the great things with it being a Trek bike, is you can just go find a dealer and test ride it, see what you think about it. And while we're talking about test riding, a shout out to Debbie and the rest of the crew at the North Fort Collins Trek store. They fitted this for me and let me hang on to it for a few days. So I've already put on over 30 miles on it, been able to, you know, really get a feel for the bike, see how it rides. I've had a tremendous experience with it so far. I absolutely love it. It fits with my style. I like having a little bit more forward of a position for my riding style. Not quite forward aggressive, but a little bit leaning more forward. I like to pedal more as I ride. I love having the rear rack. It's really just loaded out with features, and they've actually added more features than they had on the original Verve Plus. So this rack is a new standard feature. Before, it was a $45 add-on to get the rack. Now it just comes standard. Awesome. Standard rack here, so you've got the maximum load of 25 kilograms, which is around 52 pounds. Standard gauge tubing here, and it's got some extra mounting points here for mounting bags or panniers, so easy to mount those. I think that's awesome. It's really sturdily mounted too. In addition to being mounted on the frame, it's also attached to the fender here. The fenders are included. They did change these. Before they were aluminum alloy, and now they're plastic. So plastic means lighter weight, and they're a little bit more resilient. You know, they're not going to get bent or scratched and dinged, and no risk of rust like you might see on steel. Now, plastic ones can rattle a bit more. That's one of the downsides for them. Now, as I mentioned, I've been doing quite a bit of riding on this bike, and I haven't had any issues with the fenders rattling. They're mounted very well. Great coverage, you know, nice full size. I appreciate that we got the toe strike guard right up here. And I did actually go out and ride in some bad weather just to really test the fenders and see how they did. Went out and rode around during some sleet, lots of water on the road. They did awesome. I didn't get any water or mud on me, so love the fenders. Appreciate that they're included. You also get lights. Now they've changed up the lights here. So the headlight up here, this is a Herman's light. It's at, I think it's 120 lumens. And so it's nice and bright, does a good job. It lights up the road ahead of you, so it's easy to ride at night, as opposed to some lights that are just more for safety and making you be seen. Now, the light that they had on the 2018 model was actually embedded into the frame right there, and it was a pretty cool light. You know, you could aim it and adjust the angle, and it was a cool way to embed a light, but it came with a downside being mounted on the frame, that it wouldn't turn when you steer. And so that was actually one of the critiques that we had mentioned on that review, was that it doesn't turn when you steer, so be aware of that riding at night. Now they've got it mounted onto the fork here, so it does turn when you steer, makes it even easier to see the road when you're out riding at night. So I think that is a great upgrade right there. They've also made some changes to their cable management. It's all internally routed in the frame. Looks absolutely beautiful. Before they had the cables for, I believe it was the brakes, that were still externally routed out here. And you know, that still worked. It wasn't bad, but everything is going through the frame now. Makes it look even more sleek. The frame is a little bit thicker and shaped a little bit differently. It flattened out quite a bit more on the top tube here and also on the down tube. So it's a little bit thicker. Of course, this is an extra large frame, and before we looked at the medium, so that can have some effect for it, but I like the new look. It looks more sturdy, in my opinion. And they've also beefed up the bottom bracket here. It's quite a bit thicker, and it seems like it's a lot stronger to me. I appreciate that. Now, the frame is still aluminum alloy. It's Trek's Alpha Gold alloy, as they call it. And check this out. We got two sets of bottle cage bosses. There is one on the seat post tube here and one on the top tube. You can mount all kinds of gadgets with those. You know, we call them bottle cage bosses, but they are good for mounting all kinds of stuff, like locks, for example, and keeping those from sliding around. So that is awesome. Now, something that is a little strange, in my opinion, is on the step-through model of the bike, there's actually no bottle cage bosses. At least I wasn't able to see any looking at photos of it, so that's a little bit strange. So, but just so you know, if you really are set on having those, then high step frame might be the way to go for you. Now, moving on, we've got a few more changes from the 2018 model to talk about. One of my favorites is this awesome big plastic chain guard. Covers the front chain ring and the chain itself. Great coverage. It protects it from getting, you know, dirt and water and who knows what else stuck in there, but it also protects your pant legs from getting in there, getting greasy, dirty, or torn up. That is fantastic. Did not have one in 2018. That was one thing that we pointed out and said, hey, this would be cool to see. So that is awesome. Really great to see it included on this model. Still got the slap guard on that chainstay. Keeps it from getting scratched by the chain bouncing. I like the powered by Bosch branding that they got going on there. We're still working with the same group set as last time. So this is the Shimano Alivio. This is one of Shimano's top tier derailleurs. Performs fantastically. It's a 9-speed here. We're looking at 11 to 36 teeth on that rear cassette. So that's a pretty big range. I think that's awesome. And it performs fantastic. It's smooth shifting. We've got a few other changes from the original model that are worth pointing out. The saddle got a little bit of an upgrade here. This is the Bontrager Boulevard saddle. It is just a little bit wider than the original, and it's also got the gap in the middle here for better ventilation. It's still the same basic shape where it's kind of wide in the back, still fairly narrow in the front so that you're still able to pedal a lot without that being a problem, and it's a comfy saddle. I like it. I think it's just fantastic to ride on. Still got the same suspension seat post as before. This coil suspension here, you don't get a whole lot there. You know, it's about 30 millimeters of travel, pretty standard for a suspension seat post. The seat post is bigger. We've bumped up to 31.6 millimeter diameter instead of the 27.2 before. I like that. It's a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more supporting strength. It's got a steel core inside there, and the coil suspension is adjustable for preload. So if you pop the seat post out, you can use an Allen wrench and tighten that up or loosen it as you need to. Awesome to fit different sizes of riders. You can go all the way up to 350 pounds for the total weight limit on this bike as well. So it's nice that you can adjust that suspension to fit your needs there. Another thing that's changed from the previous generation of this is the fork up here. We had a alloy fork before, now we've got solid steel. Trek actually calls it the Verve Plus steel fork. So this does add a little bit of weight, but then you also get some vibration dampening to it, and it's a little bit more sturdy. Now remember, steel can rust, so if it gets scratched or dinged, you know, maybe you accidentally hit it on something like that, be sure to, you can put some like clear plastic tape over that scratch so it doesn't rust. Touch-up paint is a great way to go. Fortunately, since there's a lot of Trek dealers all over the place, if you do need to get that touched up, they will be able to help you out. Another component that has changed since the 2018 model is the pedals. The new pedals here, these are the Bontrager Satellite City pedals. So they are molded plastic with a steel core. Nice grip pattern on the top here. They've got a lot of these little bumps, as you can see. They are very grippy. I didn't have any problems with feeling like my feet were maybe going to slip off while I was riding, even when I was riding in really wet conditions. And the nice thing about them being molded plastic too is even if your feet did slip off, so the crank cycles around and hits you in the shins or something like that, these are not going to do nearly as much damage as an alloy pedal might. All right, folks, we've got a couple more changes to talk about here, things that have changed since the 2018 version. Taillight is new. This is the Solo Bispinning taillight. Instead of being mounted on the fender as it was previously, it's now mounted on that rear rack, carrier mounted. Still integrated, you can still activate it from the front display pad there, and it's drawing power from the battery, so you don't have to worry about changing out batteries back here. I like it. It gets the job done. The one before did have a nice flashing pattern by default. That was nice because it's a little bit extra visibility when you've got a flashing light. No more flashing, but still works great. Moving back around here, the brakes have changed, but not in a significant way. It's a different model of brake, but it's still the Shimano hydraulic disc brakes. We got 160 millimeter rotors in the front and rear. Those are dual piston calipers. Good solid stopping power. I think the model number on these new ones is the MT200s. We've still got the two finger levers here. Still pretty darn easy to actuate since we're working with hydraulic disc brakes. So they still work awesome. Now, everything else on here, I do believe, was on the last edition of the Verve Plus that we reviewed. We've still got the same Bontrager stem here. This is a Quill Stem, so it's highly adjustable. You can get, raise those handlebars up a lot higher or lower as needed to fit your size and riding style. And one nice thing with these stems here is that they are blender compatible. Blender is an attachment platform, so you can mount all kinds of stuff on the front of the stem there. Now, a lot of people will use that for mounting lights or mounting a cycle computer. You don't really need that here because we've got awesome headlights. We've got the Bosch Purion display, which functions like a cycle computer. But you could add like a Garmin GPS. There's all kinds of a phone holder or something like that. Lots of options for attaching stuff to the bike. So check that out if you're interested in adding even more to it. Now, as I mentioned, we're still working with the Bosch Active Line, just the standard Bosch Active Line motor there. And it is a power sipper. It's not going to give you a whole bunch of support. Its maximum torque is, I think it's 40 Newton meters of torque, and that's when you're in turbo. So it doesn't give you a whole lot. This is a bike that you would want to get if you like to pedal and like to put in a bit more work and just have a little bit of help here and there, maybe when you're going up a hill or something like that. The bike does weigh a little bit more than it did before. I weighed this one at, I believe it was 52.2 pounds. Now keep in mind, this is the extra large frame, and before we looked at a medium, so it's probably pretty similar in weight. We've got some extra components like the solid steel fork, the seat post got a little bit bigger as well, so that adds a little bit of weight, but we're still in the same ballpark here, you know, right around 50 to 55 pounds, and probably under 50 by a decent amount for some of the smaller frame sizes. Moving on up, we're going to take a look at the cockpit here. We've got the same handlebars as before. They've got just a little bit of a rise, you know, barely low rise, bit of a sweep back as well. The grips are super comfy. These are the Bontrager Elite grips, so they're rubber, ergonomic locking. Feels just awesome. As I mentioned, we still got those Shimano hydraulic brakes, and we've got the same display that we did last time. We're gonna go ahead and fire that up with the power button on the top here. This is the Bosch Purion. So this is on a lot of Bosch equipped bikes. We've covered it tons of times on different bikes, and we've got some write-ups on our forum that kind of a deep dive into Purion and some of their different displays. So this one is the more basic one. You've got some other ones like the Intuvia, or the newest one, the Kiox, that are a little bit bigger, got more features. The Kiox is the one that's magnetic and removable, so you can pop it off. This one's not removable. It does swivel. Oop, let me turn that back on there. It does swivel a bit, so you can adjust that to reduce glare if you need to. It's really easy to see. I like these grayscale type LCDs just because they're easy to see. They get the job done. This one's nice and small and compact too. It doesn't give you very many features, but it's got all the basics that you need without getting in the way. Now this is going to get exposed to rain and sun and maybe getting bumped at the bike rack since it is not removable, but they're durable. They do a great job of holding up, so you shouldn't have any problems there. Now these, when you turn it on, it starts in off, so that means no assist. And I've actually done quite a bit of riding with no assist on it, and that's one of the things that I love about this bike, is that it feels like a normal bike. It's super easy to ride without any assist on, so if you like to do that and only use the assist every now and then, this could be a great fit of a bike for you. Now if you do want to use assist, you've got a few levels. You can go up to Eco, Tour, Sport, or Turbo. So Turbo is the highest level of assist. Now, as I mentioned with this Active Line motor, you still don't get a whole lot there. You can, it's noticeable, absolutely, but it's nothing drastic. You only get about 40 Newton meters of torque, so it's not overwhelming. And you can see your battery right there on the bottom. We've got 3 bars remaining, 3 out of 5. That's not very precise. I do prefer a percentage, but Bosch has got you covered. You can hold down the down here and see some other readouts. So there's our trip readout. There's our odometer. And then there is range. So range takes into account your current level of pedal assist, as well as, you know, the terrain you've been riding on and your riding style and stuff like that, and estimates how much range you've got left. So we can arrow this down all the way to Eco, and the range readout will update. Look at that, we got 32 miles remaining if we stick to Eco. And I've been riding this quite a bit so far, and I found that to be accurate. So that makes up for not having a battery percentage. That is awesome, nice and precise. You can see we've also got the light indicator on right there. Now these lights are on by default when you turn it on, which I appreciate. Nice and bright, it's a good safety thing, and with a power sipping motor like this, you can just leave the lights on for safety even in the daytime without really having to worry about your battery usage. Now normally to turn the lights off, you would hold down the up arrow here, but I noticed that they're not turning off on here, and so I'm wondering if maybe that's like a safety feature where they're just on all the time. I could see that. Trek does customize these quite a bit for themselves. One way that they customize them, actually, there's a walk mode button down here, but if we lean the bike up and hold down the walk button, then nothing happens. This is something that Trek does. They have the walk mode disabled on all of their models. My guess is that this is to basically to say that, hey, this bike does not have a throttle at all, you know, not even a walk mode. So be aware of that. You know, if you're sold on having walk mode on your bikes and you need that, sorry, you can't get it on here. It is a little bit of a bummer to miss it, but overall, not a big deal. While we're over here, let's go ahead and look at the battery. Now, as I mentioned, this is the PowerPack 400, same one that we saw on previous versions of the Verve Plus. This is a standard battery from Bosch, so you can, you know, pick up another one if you want to have a second one, and it'll fit right in there. It's not, there's no special customizations for it to be able to fit on the bike. And I've got the keys here so you can take a look. They do come with this ABUS tag on here. They're ABUS keys, and the reason for this is so that you can use a key to like feature, so you can get locks from Abus and other security features that will use the same key. That way you don't have to have a whole bunch of keys to keep track of. I appreciate that. That's pretty awesome. So we're gonna pop this in here and get this unlocked. So you turn it forward here to unlock it, and it does kind of spring back a little bit. See if I can do this with one hand. There we go. Just pops right out. Fairly lightweight for a battery. 5.4 pounds is what you're looking at on here, and it does have a button and a readout right here so that you can see your battery readout while it's off the bike. There's the charging port on the bottom. It is the exact same port as for the bike's port itself, so you only need the one charger. Get the grass off of there. We'll pop this back in. Now, one thing I do want to point out for you guys, just get that snapped in. There we go. The charge port on the bike is right here, kind of at the bottom of the battery. It's got the nice rubber cover on it, keeps it protected, and don't get any dirt or water or anything like that in there. The only downside is that it's really close to the crank arm. So when this pedals around here, that goes right across that charge port. So you do want to watch out for that if you're charging the battery while it's on the bike. Make sure you don't move the bike around. You don't want it to get bumped or fall over and damage that cable or the charge port. So be careful about that. My recommendation generally is to charge it off the bike. That way you don't have to worry about that. You can bring the battery inside. If you keep your bike out in the garage where it gets hot and cold, that can be pretty rough on lithium-ion batteries. You don't want to stress the cells out by exposing them to those extreme temperatures. So if you can bring it inside when you're not riding the bike, that is generally going to be better for those. Hey guys, quick detour while we're talking about it. I did bring the charger so you can look. Now this is the Bosch compact charger. So Bosch's standard charger is a 4-amp charger, which charges faster, but it's a bit bigger. I think it weighs around 1.7 pounds. Now with the compact one, it's quite a bit lighter. You're looking at only about 1.2 pounds. Pretty small. It's only 2 amps, so this isn't going to charge as fast. I think this is a good fit for this bike because it's more of a power sipper. You get a lot of range out of it, and so it's not a bike where you need to, ride it to work and then charge it quickly while you're at work so that you can ride it home, kind of a thing. You should be able to get there and back on one charge. So I think this is a good fit, and it does, of course, help keep the cost down for the bike itself by using the compact instead of the larger, faster charger. And we've got the same kickstand as we did before. It's rear mounted back here, adjustable length without needing a tool. I like that it's in the back. You got the kickstand up and you're moving it backwards. Maybe you're moving it around in your garage or something like that. You don't have to worry about any kind of a collision there. Just a few more things to talk about before we jump on and take it for a spin. We've got a lot of similar components from the earlier generation of the Verve Plus here. We've got the same tires here. These are the Bontrager H5s. Fantastic tires here. They have their highest level of puncture protection, which is called their hard case ultimate protection. So very puncture resistant. I like this, especially in Colorado. We got a lot of goat heads around and other stuff that can really mess up your tires. So it's nice to not have to worry about that. Got the same hybrid tread pattern on these as well. You can see it's a lot more smooth and efficient in the center. This is great for city riding, helps you to be smooth and efficient. And then we've got a bit more tread on the outside here, a little bit more like what you might see on a mountain bike tire. That's good for some extra traction, especially while turning. So if you're out riding and it's wet and rainy and something like that, and you're going around a corner, you get a little bit of extra traction to help you out, which is a great fit on a bike like this that comes with the fenders because you might be out riding in the rain. All right, guys, so we've talked about just about everything here except for the price. Now, the Verve Plus 2 is going to set you back $24.99. Now, for reference, the original Verve Plus back in 2018 was $22.99. So we're 2 years later. We've got quite a few upgrades here, and the price has only gone up by $200. That is fantastic, in my opinion. They added the rear rack, comes standard now. Got the awesome chain, full chain cover there, good protection, steel fork. The seat post is a little bit thicker and more sturdy. The warranty is a huge upgrade. You get lifetime on the frame and fork now instead of just 5 years. So I think that is really compelling. They added all this stuff, only raised up the price by a little bit. And of course, with it being Trek, you have all the choices of frame size and color. You've got a lot of dealers for support. Having the dealers is really nice just so you can go in and get fitted and actually go for a test ride. So I think that's a really compelling bike. It's one of my favorites that I've reviewed so far. All right, so that's enough talking about it here. We are going to jump on and take it for a spin. All right, guys, time to take it for a spin here. Now, starting out, I'm actually going to just leave the display completely off and just ride it like a bike. And this is something that I mentioned earlier. One of my favorite parts about it is that It's just so smooth and comfortable and easy to ride as a bike with no assistance. It's a good bike to have if you get stuck without any battery charge remaining. It's super smooth, feels really good. It's a nice riding position too. It's, you know, a little bit forward. It's pretty close to upright, really. So very comfortable, and of course with that Quill Stem up there, you can adjust that to fit your riding style if you prefer it a little bit more upright or maybe a little bit more forward, get a little bit more aggressive with it. Got us turned around here so we can take a look at that derailleur in action. This is that Shimano Alivio. So nice and smooth shifting there, as you would expect from a Shimano Alivio. Now, these Bosch systems do have shift detection, so they will actually ease up on electric assistance a little bit while you're shifting. Now, we're not using the motor at all right now, but that is a nice feature to have when you are using the motor. Now, I still recommend that you ease up on the pedals a bit when shifting. You know, shift detection isn't perfect, and you want to take good care of that drivetrain. Now, I do appreciate the stability of this bike as well. One nice thing having a high-step frame, of course, is that a little bit more sturdy, less frame flex, and this one is actually pretty easy to ride no-handed as well, which is something that I enjoy doing, and I appreciate that extra stability. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and fire up the electrical system here. We can get some help out from that. So I'll hit the power button on the top of the Purion display. That will fire up, starts off. We'll bump that onto Eco first. Now I can barely hear the motor. Move down here so you can get a closer look and listen. Hear it a little bit, not very much. We're gonna bump that up to turbo. So now we're in the highest level of assist. And even here, still very quiet. It's one of the nice things with the Bosch Active Line motors is that they are very quiet. They're not a whole lot of power, so that can be kind of nice if you like being, I guess maybe even like a little bit more stealthy and don't want to be obnoxious to other people on the trail. And it's a noticeable amount of power. It helps out, especially, you know, going up hills like we got this one here. Just enough power to really be helpful without being overwhelming, which is why it's one of my favorite motors. But, you know, as I mentioned, I'm somebody that really likes to pedal a lot while I'm riding. I like to be a little bit more active. Good fit if that's your style. Now, one nice thing about these Bosch motors is their responsiveness. So they are measuring pedal cadence and rear wheel speed and torque, how much pressure you put onto the pedals. They're measuring over 1,000 readings per second from all of those sources. So very responsive. They kick in right when you start pedaling, stop right when you stop. They give you more power if you press down more on the pedals. So that is really nice to get that responsiveness. You know, this is compared to some cheaper systems that have a rear hub motor and a cadence sensor. Has a lot more delay, really not as responsive. Now, these systems can be less than ideal if you've got really sensitive knees. That's one area where a cadence sensor can really be helpful, is because you just have to be cycling. You don't have to really put much pressure onto the pedals. So if that's you, that might be something you would want to consider, since this bike will require you to be a bit more active, to pedal more and to put a little bit more force into it. Now, I do want to talk a little bit more about ride comfort here. I mentioned the riding position, or I should say the seating position, being very comfortable. It's kind of right in between the upright and the forward for me. You can adjust that quite a bit with the stem, of course, and if you really like the upright riding style, you can go with the step through. It's a little bit more approachable. Now, the saddle is very comfortable. I like it. It's nice and wide, very comfortable to sit on. Now, of course, a big part of comfort is suspension, and all we've got on here is that suspension seat post. You know, it's maybe 30 millimeters of travel, so not a lot, but it does work really well when combined with these tires. We talked about these a little bit, we didn't mention the size. So these are They're 700 by 45C. That's about a 28-inch diameter tire, which is pretty big. Now, a benefit of having that big diameter is you get a much better attack angle. So when you're hitting bumps in the road and stuff like that, much lower attack angle compared to, say, a 20-inch diameter wheel. If you're on one of those smaller diameter wheel bikes, you're gonna feel those bumps a lot more. But on a big wheel like this, not nearly as much. You've also got, it's a little bit wider too, so you've got a little bit more float, a little bit more air in there for some extra support. So for me, this is fantastic. Now, keep in mind, my normal bike that I do most of my riding on is an old school road bike that has no suspension at all. So that's a pretty rough ride experience by comparison. So to me, you know, this feels a little bit like riding on a cloud. So based on your needs, this may not be quite enough suspension for you, especially up in the front. You know, there's some folks that have some wrist sensitivity, and so not having suspension in the front can be rough. You get a lot of bumps and jarring up here, so if your hands or wrists are sensitive to that, that might not be a great fit for you. The grips are very comfy, these nice ergonomic Bontrager grips, but just be aware of that, no suspension up front. So as I mentioned, you know, it's Trek, so you can go find a dealer and test one of these out, see if that's gonna be enough suspension and comfort for you. All right, friends, that is a wrap for the Trek Verve Plus 2. Thanks for hanging out with me for this review. Big thanks to Trek for making it possible, of course. Now, if you check the description, you'll see a link to the full written review back on ElectricBikeReview.com. We've got the specs, the stats, the measurement, lots of pictures that you can check out. We've also got our compare tool. You can compare this head to head with the original Verve Plus or with other bikes to help you make your decisions. We've also got forums there. You can check out the Trek forum and talk with other owners and riders. Now, if you've got thoughts about this bike, maybe you've got some questions for us, or maybe you're an owner of this model or the previous version, or just some thoughts on Trek in general, chime in the comments section here on YouTube or back on our forum. We would love to hear from you and talk with you about it. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. Ride safe, and we'll see you out there on the trails.